Hey there, everyone. I believe we are live. I'm going to double check on Facebook itself to make sure. So I know the one time that I don't check is the one time it won't be live. Wouldn't want that. Looks like there we are. We are good to go. Awesome to see it. So, hey there. I'm Jason Logston, and this is Makin Bacon, where I'll help you serve your fans, grow your income, and get the most out of your blog. Today's episode is brought to you by my very own Self-Publishing 101, How to Publish a Printed Cookbook on Amazon using KDP. And the average home cook owns almost 50 times more printed cookbooks than PDF cookbooks. So why are you limiting yourself so much? With the advent of print-on-demand companies like Amazon KDP and Ingram Spark, it is now easier than ever to become your own publisher. But if you don't know what you're doing, you can waste not only your own time, but also your money. And that's where my video course comes in, stepping you through the entire self-publishing process. You can check that out at makethatbacon.com/publish now. And take that and then let me help you make your cookbook dream a reality. Remember, you can join us live every Thursday when we record these episodes. You can ask the guest questions, talk to other bloggers in the comments, and even see our smiling faces. So join us Thursdays at makethatbacon.com/live. Now, on to the show. As bloggers, we are always chasing success, but oftentimes we focus so much on being productive and getting the work done that we forget to take care of ourselves. And just like a car that never gets tune-ups, when we stop taking care of ourselves, we stop functioning at the same level of performance. It can be a hard balancing act, though, especially these days with everything going on. So, luckily, today's guest is the perfect person to help us out. She's a content creator behind the decade-old food blog Pip and Ebby. Then, a serious love for food bloggers combined with a strong desire to watch entrepreneurs succeed and an obsession with time management, productivity, and self-care prompted her to start Eat Blog Talk, a podcast and a community for food bloggers. In every area of her business, she loves bringing people together, helping them achieve big dreams, and also making lasting connections and friendships. I can't wait to learn from today's guest, Megan Porta from Pip and Ebby and Eat Blog Talk. Megan, welcome to Makin Bacon.
Thanks for having me again, Jason. It's so fun to be here again.
It's nice having you on. It's your second time on, I believe, which is always fun having repeat guests when they're good enough the first time. You know, they pass muster.
So happy to be here.
So I figured I'd start off by addressing the elephant in the room because, as you know, and maybe some of the listeners do, I was making holiday cookies and we were using your recipes. So I want you to know they turned out well. The decorations are in progress, and we're very excited. I'm a cook, but not a baker. My wife is neither, and we both had a good time, and all the recipes have turned out really good. So thank you.
I'm so happy to hear it. Did you just do the sugar cookies, or did you do others?
We did the gingerbread cookies, the sugar cookies, and we are going to do the bourbon salted caramels.
Oh, those are amazing. Okay, that'll be great too.
So I appreciate your good recipes, and a little plug for Pip and Ebby there. I was like, oh, it's perfect timing with you coming on the podcast.
Well, I'm glad they turned out. That would have been miserable to hear that they were an absolute fail. So good.
It would be a much different podcast. I would just berate you for 60 minutes. I can't believe you ruined Christmas for me and my wife. Jeez.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Well, thanks for sharing those.
Yeah. So if anyone's looking for holiday cookies, check them out. A lot of other good recipes out there. And you even have a cookie cookbook, right?
I do. I'm slightly obsessed with cookies all around. So yes, I have a cookbook, lots of cookies on my site, and they're all so yummy.
So you're also a repeat guest. So you've answered the standard question. So I'll ask you a variation of it. So before we get started, what is it typically like around your breakfast table these days?
Oh, that's a good question. Kind of the same as dinner, honestly. We have a little part of our counter in our kitchen where we all just kind of stand around for meals usually. And we do the same at breakfast, kind of talk about our day and tell our boys what they need to do. And we're on the same page with evening plans and all of that. So strangely, breakfast is very similar to dinner for us.
It's good that it's a good family affair and everyone kind of coming together.
Yeah, it is. I guess that is good.
And has it been different with homeschooling and all of that going on?
The breakfast hasn't changed. No, homeschooling has not changed that. we always have done that, just kind of gathered around talking about our day. And yeah, that has stayed the same.
One of the only things.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wanted to talk about this equation for success that you've been refining lately. I'd like to talk a little bit about where it currently is for you and just kind of how you've put this together.
So how I put it together, well, honestly, just experience being an entrepreneur, and I have just these obsessions. I love productivity. I've always been fascinated with productivity. So coming into being an entrepreneur, I just started trying to be as productive as possible, constantly trying to get more work done. And then as I did that more, then I realized, I can't just be productive. I also need to be efficient. So I need to be working not just on whatever, but I need to be working on the right things. So then it was like, okay, I need to be productive, but I also need to be efficient. And then I started realizing that I was really only working on one thing. So then I realized I need to probably diversify, because I was putting all of my energy for like way more years than I'd like to admit into ad revenue, which is now it's like, what was I thinking? So on top of being productive and efficient, I realized I should probably branch out a little bit. So I started doing that. And then I realized I was still like really burnt out, because I was just working all the time. I was working in the evenings for so many years, Jason. I worked with my computer in my lap after like the kids went to bed. I would sit with my husband and we'd watch shows or watch a movie. And I worked through that whole, like all evening long. And that went on for years and years and years. And I would work all of weekends. I mean, I was working all the time. So yes, maybe I was working on the right things, kind of, but just like there wasn't an end to it. So then I realized, this was very recent, probably it was last May. So right at the end of that initial stretch of quarantine, that really strict stretch, I realized that I was feeling really burnt out still. And there was really no reason for it, because I hadn't gone anywhere. I didn't have any new projects. At that time, I was really only focusing still on ad revenue. So I knew something needed to change. So I just started implementing these small acts of self-care into my life. And for me, that meant quitting working at a certain time and putting my computer down, putting my phone down, not sleeping with my phone in my room, little things like that I started to do. And I did this experiment over the summer. And by the end of the summer, I realized that so many things had changed without me even knowing it. So I was just like, overall, a super happy person for the first time in so long. I no longer felt burnt out. I didn't feel frazzled. I wasn't tired all the time. I was actually spending time with my family. I would sit with my husband at night and actually talk to him. I would spend quality time with my kids in the evening, whereas before I would say, I have to get this done. I'll hang out with you later. So all of these things were changing. And then it was kind of like magic with my business too, because I realized that without even really knowing it, I had been diversifying and starting new projects and going down new avenues. So I was making more money. I mean, all of these things kind of transpired. So that is kind of the equation that I go by, is that you need to be productive, but you also need to be really efficient with what you're doing and really manage that time well. So thinking through ahead of time what you're going to be working on, making sure it's aligning with your goals. And then just like really taking care of yourself and making sure that you have space and time to be creative and be an efficient business owner and a good wife or a good husband or a good friend or whatever role you play, a good mom, dad. And that really was like the key for me, figuring that out. I wish I would have figured it out a long time ago, but I'm just really grateful that that piece fell into place.
I want to dive into each one of those. And I want to start with self-care, which was like the final piece of the puzzle for you, because I feel like a lot of people are like, well, yeah, self-care matters. And I will do that once I finish all my other work and I get caught up and I'm not frazzled. Then I can take care of myself. And that point never comes. So how can people prioritize taking care of themselves or make those first steps?
Listening to my story, like seriously, I did that for so long. I put self-care aside because I did the same thing. Food bloggers resist slowing down. I resisted it for so many years because I thought, well, if I can just get this one project done, or if I can figure out how to get like 1 million page views or whatever, it's like never ending. Once that happened, then there was another thing. So yeah, so you just need to like realize, first of all, that the whole concept of slowing down is only going to help you. It's going to open up space for you. It's going to open up time. We've all worked when we're feeling frazzled, and that feeling, you're just like, I can't think straight. I can't get anything done. I don't even know what I'm working on right now, but I know I should be working. You're not effective. You're not an effective worker at all. So I guess just first of all, understanding that concept and realizing that you do it. Because honestly, most food bloggers do it when they start, especially because there's so much to do, as you know, Jason. It's a never ending job. It goes on forever and ever. So just taking a really long, hard look, and being honest with yourself and saying, I do this, I work too much, I work too hard, I need to slow down. And just implementing one small thing. This is kind of goes along with your whole thing about starting small, starting simple. This applies here too. Just do one little change in your life, and I promise that will snowball, because you'll see, if you do it consistently, you will start to see that pay off in some way, and then you'll want to add more. So my thing was, back in May, I mentioned that I came to a point where I was like, I have to do something. So the first thing I did was I took email off of my phone, because I was one of those people that was totally addicted to phone email for some reason. I would be at the grocery store and I'd be like scrolling through my email, and then just like, what am I doing? I don't need to look at anything here. No one is going to email me something incredibly important while I'm standing in the line at the grocery store.
If you don't reply in the next 2 minutes, you're going to miss out on this great brand opportunity.
I know, it was so dumb. So I made, that was one of the first changes I made, and it was significant for me. I realized I was saving so much time not looking at my phone and not looking at my email. So something as simple as that, like whatever your struggle is, if you struggle with maybe it's like having your phone open in the evenings or your computer, just start with like putting a deadline on when you can look. So set it down at 5 p.m., set it down at 6 p.m., and do that for a stretch and see how it changes your life, because I promise it will. And then you can start adding things from there.
I started reading before bed every night, which made a really helpful like wind down period of like 15 minutes, not on my phone, not doing anything. And I don't have my phone in the bedroom anymore either. And it's been great took me a while to get used to it, but it was like disconnecting enough that I was like, okay, my work day is over. My thinking day is basically over. I'm going to go read sci-fi fantasy novels for 30 minutes and then fall asleep, which made a big difference for me.
That's a good one too, because we all get used to looking at screens. We look at them all day. So if you're looking at a screen in the evening, that can affect your sleep, and maybe you're like looking at work right before bed too, and that your brain is constantly thinking of work strategies and things that you need to do and tomorrow's schedule. So if you can just like disconnect with, like you said, sci-fi or something that's like completely unrelated to work or screens, I think that is such a great way to start.
Have you found that a lot of self-care comes down to kind of intention? Like for me, I feel like there's nothing wrong with working late. There's nothing wrong with working a weekend or any of that. But it's if you're making the decision to do that versus it's the default and you're just like, well, I'm working because I work every night. But, making that decision, like I'm not going to hang out tonight because I'm working, versus really looking at that and saying, is that what I want in this situation?
That is, such a great question, because I believe that time management is actually one of the biggest forms of self-care you can give yourself. So managing your time, if you intentionally go into an evening knowing you're going to be working, because I do that. I mean, I have projects that I have to get done where I have to sit down in the evening. So it's not like I never work at night anymore. but I go into the day knowing exactly that that's what needs to happen. So yes, definitely intention is everything with self-care. If sometimes I have to work all weekends too. Like last month I had a huge project I had to get done by Monday morning and I didn't have it done. So I knew that. But it's more that last minute thing, like, oh, I think I'll just peek at my phone or open my laptop for no good reason. You don't really have a reason to do it. So yes, time management is the number one form of self-care, in my opinion.
I feel like it's also super hard to set those boundaries working from home. And so many people with traditional jobs are realizing that. Like my wife works in an office normally, and she's really struggling for the last 9 months to be like, oh, it's 8 o'clock. Should be disconnected. But, she works at CBS Sports. So there's people working, they have shows going on, around the clock basically. And no one knows if she is working or not because she's not in the office. So she gets emails and texts and stuff. And it's been something she's working on a lot more lately, but it's been hard that it's not that, okay, I'm leaving the office and therefore people know I'm gone and I can stop whenever I can stop working physically, where now it's just bleeds over. And I feel like something a lot of us struggle with.
I totally agree with that. And I think that's one thing that entrepreneurs are really good at because we do it so often and we work alone and like over time, you just get really good at that. And if you don't, you will, because it's just a mess when you let all of life bleed over into work and you don't know when you're starting or stopping. So eventually we learn that we need to set time constraints around our life, around our work and our life and separate those. Because if you don't do that, things get messy and ugly. And I don't know, I sometimes will wander into the basement. That's where my office is, just to do laundry or something. And I'm like, ooh, my computer is right over there. I should go. I'm like, no, this is not work time. This is home time. This is family time. So I have to be really strict with myself. I didn't used to be like that. I used to let it all bleed over and just anything was off or on limits. So yeah, you do need to be really strict. And I'm kind of strict to like a really, really, really minute degree. Like I will get down to the minute and I work until 5 p.m. every night. And I've talked about this in our community too, but I tell my boys, if it's like 5:02 and I'm still working, come into my office, drag my sleeve. I'm not kidding. And they'll be like, Mom, you are still working. It's 5:03. And I say, thank you so much because I'm just like the type of person that needs that. And I don't know that everyone would need that strict guideline, but I definitely do. Everyone works differently.
I definitely struggle with the bleed over. As you can tell, I'm like, that's where I cook dinner. And so I can obviously see my computer screen. And if, I'll normally have like Spotify or something on. And if new emails pop up or things like that, I'll be like, oh, I wonder what that is. Or someone's Skyping me or, sending me a message on Slack. It could be a friend saying hi. It could be work stuff. And then I go over there and get distracted and
it's hard. It's hard to draw those lines. And for some of us, it takes having, difficulty pop up or being really frazzled or burnt out. And then we're like, okay, I need to set boundaries. So just take our advice. If you haven't gotten to that point, just know that you will if you keep doing that and you let everything bleed together. So it's a good idea to take care of that up front and not let it get to the point of being burnt out, because I don't know about you, Jason, but I've been there and it is a really ugly place to be. So I think especially for women, I don't mean to exclude men at all, but women, especially moms, tend to take on just so much, and we feel like we need to take care of our house and our husbands and our kids, and then we push us aside, and then now we're business owners, we have that, and so it's just kind of an ugly equation if you're not careful.
I think that's one of the nice things about starting small, like you said as well, that it's like almost no one is in the position that they can't find 15 minutes for themselves. And if you're looking at your schedule and you're like, I honestly can't find 15 minutes at any point in my day, like it's probably a good wake up to, reassess kind of some of the other things going on there. But like find those 15 minutes. This isn't, you don't have to do this huge overhaul in your entire life, but find a little bit of time for yourself and then build from there where you are a priority. And this, during that 15-minute span, you are the most important thing, regardless of family and children and work and anything else.
I think that's a really good point, what you just said about if you don't have 15 minutes for yourself, there's probably a larger issue going on. So you should reevaluate. But yeah, it's really not hard. Even if you have small kids and you have a really busy life, there's always a way to find, even starting with 5 minutes, take 5 minutes at the beginning of the day, get up early before anyone's awake, even if that means getting up at 5:30 a.m. and just take that time for yourself. I think starting the day with you time is actually a really good place to start, because at the end of the day, we're all frazzled and tired and we just want to veg and go to bed. So starting your day with just, yourself, and if that means like writing in your journal or taking a walk outside if it's nice, or meditating, or just something that doesn't involve work, anyone else, and just focuses on you. And it can be really simple. And then you can always build it from there. If it's 5 minutes and you do that for 2 weeks and it works great, then add a few more minutes. There's always a way to make that work.
I liked your point too of you should focus on this now. If you don't currently feel burnt out or stressed or overwhelmed, then it probably will be coming, and now's the time to figure it out. I was talking to Cami Kilgore, formerly from Everything Food Conference, and she was talking about the things that she does to help build up her mental strength. And she focuses so much on that when things are going great, because then it's easy to get in these habits and set these routines, because you have the mental energy and physical energy to do it. Where if you wait until you're at a point where you really need it, then in a lot of cases, it's too late. You don't want to start your training to run a marathon when you're midway into the marathon. You want to start when you have energy and you're refreshed, months beforehand.
That is so true, because I mentioned that I have reached that stage of just being like really burned out. I've been in really bad places before because of my work and because I love my work so much. And at that time, like when I think of the really bad times, I didn't know how to handle taking care of myself, or I didn't know how to handle getting to a place where I was really frazzled. So yeah, that made it way worse. I was like, what do I do with this? This is terrible. So I don't even know how to get out of here. But now, having been through it, I realize the importance of doing it proactively, like taking care of myself proactively, because of that, because it's so scary to be there. And I just feel so much more well equipped, like you said, what Cami said, like you need to know how to get out of a situation before you're in a really bad spot. So I don't know, I'm trying to think, how do you communicate that to somebody, the importance of that to somebody who hasn't actually been in a really frazzled state, like us just sitting here saying, yeah, you need to focus on it. It might not ring true to them because they haven't experienced it. So I don't know. What do you think? How do you really communicate the importance of taking care of yourself when somebody may have not experienced it?
I would say that while everyone might not have experienced it to the degree that you have, or that I have at various points, when it is, you're just like feel overwhelmed for a long period of time. I think everyone experiences that at different times. Like we've all had days that were like, I need to get this brand done, I need to get this, and now a kid's sick from school, and it's just you feel very overwhelmed in that day. And I think even having these types of mechanisms can help you recover more quickly for those days. And having gone through just a single day like that, or a single afternoon, you can intellectually now you can look and say like, okay, I was not effective. I was not at my best. I wasn't doing my best work. And so putting some safeguards into place to ensure that that doesn't happen, in a larger scale, I think is kind of a good, it makes sense intellectually to do that. Just like most of us have never had our WordPress hacked, but that doesn't mean that we don't try to back up our site, because if it does happen, we want to make sure that we are covered. And to me, it's a really good form of insurance to make sure that I can continue moving forward at the rate and the quality of work that I want to. And if I don't kind of put in those routines into place now, then it's going to struggle when, the pandemic happens and my wife's working from home and there is no schedule anymore that I'm used to. And being able to adapt to that was a lot easier because I still kind of put in these pillars of like, well, I still have this time and I still have this and I still have that. And then I could build my schedule around something familiar.
Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe just taking note of those times when you're not maybe like super burnt out, but you're still frazzled and overwhelmed and you feel like, how am I going to get through this day? And just like recognizing it, just seeing it for what it is, and then realizing that times 100 would be really bad. So doing what you can to get through those days that are like bad, but not terrible. And then just improving on your self-care, I think, if that makes sense.
And I think it's always good to keep trying to improve everything, even things that are going well. I think that's the best time to work on stuff is when things are going well and you can I get more out of this? Can I improve myself better? And I think routines and taking care of yourself and being more intentional about what you're deciding to do is a great way to do it. And like you said, just pay attention every time you check your email. Pay attention to, is anything important coming through? Does this distract me from anything else? And did I actually need to check this? Don't judge it. Don't try to change any of your email habits. Don't do any of that. But just every time you do that, every time you check your email, run that through your head. And at some point, for me at least, I was like, okay, this is like the 20th time that I've checked my email that nothing important came through. There was nothing I needed to see in any way, shape, or form. And I was still checking. And I just started to feel silly. So that's why I stopped checking as much. I was just like, this is moronic because no one's emailing me. There's no reason for me to be checking.
And yeah, how many times do you get an email that is like, if you don't reply to this pronto, you are going to miss out on this amazing opportunity? Zero. Like that.
Yeah, we delete that because it's spam.
Right, exactly. That has never happened. The most important person, the Food Network, is not going to email you and expect you to reply within 2 hours. I mean, that's ridiculous. So just knowing that and seeing it and being like, yeah, that's really dumb of me to think that I need to do this now. And all of those little times you're checking your email or whatever it is, getting on social media, are adding up. All of that time adds up and you're taking away from your life. You're taking away from valuable experiences and people and relationships. So yeah, I think that's a great point, Jason, just to like recognize it for the stupidity that it is, and talking about me, not you, but
no, it was for me too.
And just saying, yeah, that doesn't make sense. I need to absolutely stop this is probably a really good place to start.
And one of the things I noticed when I was being intentional about checking my email and paying attention to when I was checking it was I would notice that I would be trying to figure out like, what's the best way to describe this process, in an article, or what's the best way to set this up on my blog? And I'd be running into a wall that I needed to think through, and I would check my email. And it was like this, my brain would be like, that seems hard. Why don't we look at the email and see if something's there? And I was like, this is taking me out of what I'm doing. And when I need to be focusing the most, it's taking me away from it. And it was just, that was really eye-opening to me that my brain was just using it as this escape mechanism. That's
a really great point too. I had never actually put thought to that, but I do the same thing. If I have email tabs open and I'm at a loss about something I'm doing with a project and like, oh, this is really boring, or I don't want to be doing this right now, then I'll just click over mindlessly. And then, yeah, I have the same thought, like, what am I doing right now? There's nothing there. There's nothing I'm looking for or waiting for. So I'll just close my tabs. I've started doing that. So it's like you almost have to trick yourself into like forming new habits so that you don't fall into that weird, it's almost like a weird mindless habit of finding something else or finding a distraction. That's really interesting. What does that say about us, that we're always looking for something to entertain us, or I don't know.
Immediate gratification.
Immediate gratification. That's so silly.
I think you probably ran into the same thing too, because you do a lot of scheduling and planning like I do, that you look at your day and like whatever I was working on was what I had decided probably the previous day and maybe even as far as the previous week, that this was the most important thing for me to be working on. So there is a almost 0% chance that anything in my inbox was more important than what I was currently doing, because I had already made that decision out of the moment. And it might be something boring. It might be something that's difficult. It might be not exciting, but it's something that's important. And that's why it was on my schedule for that day. And then to jump out just to see, well, there might be something important. And it's like, no, it's a blogger with a question, it's a reader with a question about how they sous vide something. And I'm like, this is not the most important thing in my time right now. I can do this at 5 when my brain's turning off.
And here's a good thought. It would be interesting to, throughout the day, when you do mindlessly wander over to places like email, to kind of record it and say, okay, this was a minute or 5 minutes or 30 seconds of my time, and add that up. And then compare it to if you just waited until 4 o'clock and checked your email and ran through it, it would probably take you like 2 minutes, like doing a time comparison, you would save so much time if you just waited. There are things like, I can't remember the name now, but is it inbox pause or something like that, where you can actually pause your inbox? Like they won't even deliver it to you until a certain time pre-specified. So if you do have a problem, like if you realize that this is an issue for you, you can do things like that to kind of trick yourself or manipulate your own time. But that might be good to think about if you're listening or watching and you're like, yeah, I really have an issue, because inboxes and email in general is a real issue for food bloggers. It's no joke. I mean, we kind of joke about it, but it is a huge thief of time. I can't even tell you how many hours, days, months it stole from me before I realized that it was an issue.
And I think that's the perfect segue into one of the other items, which is efficiency. Part of your formula is being efficient about your time, what you're working on, and the things that are critical. And that's where you can look at it and say, if I want to get more done, if I want to keep moving my blog forward, if I want to diversify and I want to keep putting out posts and I want to create time for myself, like that's a big ask. But if you start looking at the time that you're currently spending and say, hey, if I don't check my email while I'm doing this, and it ends up saving me a half hour each day, like that's a half hour that you can go take a bath and you're going to be just as productive as you were before. Like that frees up time because you're more efficient with the time that you are spending.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. I mean, we all get caught up with that word productivity. Like I need to be productive. And a lot of people, me included, I did this forever. A lot of people think that being productive just means like working all the time or being busy. Like even if that's jumping into your inbox every 5 minutes, people see that as, well, at least I'm working, I'm being productive. But no, it's not. You also need to be extremely efficient. And the way to do that is to think about what you're going to be doing ahead of time. And that, honestly, that's the only way to do it. Because if you just jump into a day not knowing what you're going to be working on, you're going to be floundering. You're going to be looking here and there, being distracted. Oh, what's going on Facebook? Let me check Instagram. But if you have a list and you know exactly what's going on with your day, I don't know about you, Jason, but I am like super productive. I kick out so much stuff. I'm really efficient. I know exactly which projects need my attention, which people need my attention, which things I need to not pay attention to, which is almost as important as what things you do pay attention to. So I like to do I know you do this too, but before the day begins, you just write out exactly what you need to do. And I do like order too, like I'll circle or kind of star things. Yep.
There's my list checked off.
Mine is,
Yep.
yeah. And then once I get done with the starred things, then I can move on to other things. That also goes along with time too. Like, what's the principle? Okay, I'm forgetting the name of it, but it's like that whole concept of, I almost had it. Like you can fill the amount of time required for any task or something. I said that, I butchered that.
Yeah. If you have 2 hours to write a blog post, it's going to take you 2 hours. If you have a half hour, you'll probably put one out in a half hour, and it's not going to be, 25% as good as the other one. It's going to be pretty close in quality, probably.
Exactly. It's Parkinson's law, I think. But yeah, like experiment with that. I have so much fun doing this. So it used to take me like 4 hours to write a blog post for my blog. And then I was like, wait a second, that's really long. That's half of my day. So then I halved it and I was like, okay, maybe I can do it in 2 hours. So I kind of experimented. And then I thought, well, 1 hour, now I can write a blog post in no time. It's kind of almost borderline embarrassing the amount of time I spend on my blog posts. But the quality is just as good as when I was spending 4 hours. So I recommend, if you feel like you are wasting your time, you don't know where your time is going, you're spending too much time on this or that, do that. Just like cut your time in half for any given task and see what happens, and then cut it in half again, because I guarantee you, with a little bit of practice, you can get so much done. You will surprise yourself at how much you can get accomplished if you just give yourself like that little bit of time crunch.
Yeah, there's so much that we do because we want to keep pushing ourselves towards perfect in a lot of cases. And there's a lot of wasted time in there for things that you're not going to necessarily excel at as well. Like for food photography, I started off and I was horrible at it. And I got to the point where I think I'm pretty good at food photography. I know enough food photographers to know how far from great I am, but it's something that I got to. I was like, I've really enjoyed this process. I've enjoyed learning about it. I don't look like I'm just a random person taking pictures of food on a plate anymore. So how much more time and energy do I want to spend on making my photography better? And it got to the point where like, it's not going to, my readers don't care. It doesn't make my blog posts any better. It's not adding anything to moving my blog forward.
Yeah.
So I started to really scale back on my photography, and no one's noticed. No one seems to care. And it's been it opened up a lot more time for me to do other things. And that's for my specific case. There's people that do want to be photographers. Like, you should not scale back your photography if you want to work with brands and move forward, but find those things that you're not going to be known for and your fans aren't coming to you for anyway, and try to see how much of that you can cut while still maintaining basically the same amount of value for your fans.
Totally agree. And there are so many ways these days to cut out steps. Like, I was just introduced to Jump Rope, this app that's amazing. I think I'd heard about it, but I'd never launched into it. But it's basically a way to take video production down to like a few minutes. And it's so easy. I did a test with it the other day as I was making my caramels. Just took out my phone, recorded a few little snippets of video as I was making my food. And then it took me less than 30 minutes to put a video together on Jump Rope. And I uploaded it to Pinterest just to see if, like, would Pinterest recognize this as a video and acknowledge it? Oh my gosh, I got like 5,000 video views within just a few minutes. So I was like, oh my gosh, before, when we were actually producing a lot of videos for Pip and Ebby, we were spending so much time. So much time. And yeah, if you want to get into video production and that's your thing, then definitely don't shortcut it. Like Jason said, if photography is your thing, you should spend a lot of time on photography. But if it's not, there are so many ways right now to take shortcuts and still be valid, like with Jump Rope and like with Jason's photography. I do the same, Jason. I am not ever going to be a perfect, wonderful food photographer. My photos are fine, I think. They're good. But I'm not going to be like a Lori Rice who makes a living, writing courses for photography. That's just not me. So I really hugely shortcut my photography as well. And again, kind of embarrassing how little time I spend, but I set up a scene, short, quick, simple, and I take a few photos and edit in kind of like a few minutes.
And that's where knowing where you want to go and what your expertise, what you want it to be, is so helpful, because those people that want to do food photography, like, they can still spend the same 2 hours on a blog post, but they should spend 90% of that on the photography and only 10% on writing the content and the recipe, because the people aren't going there for their amazingly complex, fascinating recipes. They're going there for their photography. So it's that balancing act of where can you shave off and where can you really focus that time. And like you said, when you have all day to do something, you will try to do the best at every aspect. And when you have an hour to do it, or a half hour, then you're like, I need this, this, and this. Everything else, tough. It's not going to get done. And so you do as good as you can. And
maybe that's okay. As good as you can might be okay.
Yep.
Yeah, for certain tasks. And then, like you mentioned, Jason, just knowing where you're going. So that means continually asking yourself, or having somebody else ask you, where do you want to be in a year? Because that does make a difference. If you know in a year you want to be selling courses on photography, then you should probably be doing that every day. But if you're not constantly checking in with your future self, then you can get so easily lost and start working on those wrong things, and you're not being efficient. You're getting frustrated because you're not getting the right things done, but you don't know what the right things are. So it's really simple. Just ask yourself, 1 year from today, where would I like to be? Where can I see myself? What will I be loving? Just kind of like tapping into that emotion of what will make you feel happy in a year with your business. I think it's really simple, and it really does come down to that.
How have you, as someone that came from the ad heavy focus and then has started to really diversify into a lot of other areas, how did you balance that act of, if I keep doing this, I'm making money, and I know that I can make more money doing this? How do you handle that transition of trying to free up time to do something that isn't making money yet, when it's taking it away from something that is making money, even though it's not quite as efficient?
Well, I had been so focused on ad revenue for so many years that it was actually kind of freeing for me to release it a little bit. It's one of those things where I was kind of clinging desperately, that desperation cling. Like if you back in your dating days when you're like, oh, I really want to date this person, I'm going to like suffocate them, kind of like that. And it never works, right? They're like, get away from me. You're clingy and weird. Not that I've ever done that, but
no, of course, neither one of us ever had that experience.
But it's the same thing. I was so clinging so desperately to that ad revenue and page views, and I have to get better. And it was almost like my page views and revenue were like, ew, Megan, stop, like get your hands off of me. And I think I realized that I was just being a little bit weird. So I think for me, taking that step back from that was actually really freeing. And I was distracting myself with other things and just saying, okay, I have put a ton of love and effort and energy into you. So you've got to show me a little bit of love back if I just release you a bit. And that is what worked for me. I know it sounds weird, but and honestly, like focusing on self-care and protecting my time a little bit more opened up space for those other things because I had more energy, I had more clarity. I was realizing that all of these people I was talking to on my podcast were super smart, experienced, successful people, and they knew what they were talking about. So I just like took one thing at a time, and I was like, okay, this person is really good with email marketing and he recommends doing this. So I would start with one little thing, and then again, not cling desperately because that never works out. And then I would do another thing. And then it was like, before I knew it, all of these things were blossoming because I was just like putting a little bit of effort into it based on hearing those smart people talk and what had worked for them. And then just stepping back and letting it happen a little bit. Does that make sense, or is that really weird?
No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's one of the best things about, for me, having a podcast is I get all these experts on and get to talk to them about the things that they're experts in, and using nuggets from what they do is a huge way that I found to at least continue moving my business forward and to help branch out into other areas that I wouldn't have, if I wouldn't have talked one-on-one with a lot of them. One of the things that I run into trouble with is they talk about, I have people on that are experts at Pinterest or at SEO or at accessibility or YouTube or live video. And there's all these things you have to do to be successful there if you want to be the best. And that's what they're all striving for in those areas. So it's been hard for me sometimes to pare back. What is that, the 20% that I need to do to get most of the results, to get good enough results for what I'm trying to do, and try to figure those out.
That's a good point too, because I'm always admiring those people who are the best at something, like Matt Mullen in email marketing. Oh my gosh, that guy knows so much about marketing and he's so successful. Casey Markey with SEO. Holy crap, he knows so much. And there are so many people in our industry that just know little tiny niches and really small parts of food blogging, and they just like dig into it and they know so much. I'm not like that. I just like have this broad overview of all of the things. So yeah, like figuring out what that 20% that I need to know about each subtopic is really hard. And I think it takes experience being an entrepreneur to know which parts to listen to. But I think we have an advantage, Jason, where we have a podcast and we talk one-on-one with people and they tell us what we need to do. We're like, okay, what is the one, where do people start with this topic? And they say, well, Megan, you start here, you need to do this. And so I think just listening, really listening to the people that do have those really like specific niches that they've just completely figured out, and not just glossing over it, but truly listening to what they say.
We're revamping some of our email marketing. I was like, I'm going to write down Matt Mullen. I should have him on the podcast so I could quiz him about what we should do.
He's full of knowledge. He's awesome.
And I think the expertise and the things you have to do get into people's heads. I was talking to a blogger who's been frustrated and burnt out because they don't like doing process shots on recipes, and they don't really like updating their old content too much. And that's been a big thing people are talking about right now, is process shots and updating old content. And she's been doing that so much over the last few months, and it's almost all she does with the blog, and she hates it and is getting burnt out on the blog and struggling to move forward, because that's what people have said, this is the best way to do it. And I think it's hard for us to remember that just because something is the best way to do something doesn't mean it's the only way or that it's required. It's just, if you want to maximize your efficiency in one direction, that's something that you probably should be doing. But if you're not trying to maximize it, then it's not that big of a deal. And if it's burning you out, you need to find something sustainable for the long term, because blogging is not a short-term endeavor.
Yeah, if something is burning you out and not filling you up consistently, I mean, we all have those things that we feel day to day, week to week, that we're like, I hate doing this. But if it's consistently making you feel like crap, then you should reevaluate and say, can I outsource this? Can I cut back on it? Is there a way to streamline? And find someone in your network, find someone in a Facebook group or a community, and bounce those ideas off of them, because you never know what options are there. Like for the process shots, maybe there's another way around that. I don't know what that would be off the top of my head, but there's always a better way to do things. And sometimes it just takes you getting the help of other people, and putting your brains together is a really powerful thing to do. I mean, sometimes I feel like there's no way I could figure out how to do X better. And then I run it by my friend Melissa. She at Mama Gourmand. She's amazing. And she'll be like, Megan, why don't you do this? I'm like, thank you. You're awesome. So really, there is so much power in community and networking. So don't discount that as an option.
And if you're interested in blogging communities, I've heard really good things about this place called Eat Blog Talk. You want to talk a little bit about your great blogging community? Yeah,
so we have a focus on connection and value. The value part comes from the podcast mostly, and then we just focus on really getting to know each other and connecting in deeper ways inside of the community. And we provide a lot of opportunities for people to connect. We have some mastermind groups that we're starting back up in January that are focused on productivity and accountability, and we're kind of putting a new spin on it. But there are always conversations going on within our community that don't happen on our free forum. So it's just like, we see so much importance in that, and the people inside there who get that just like actual connection with other food bloggers see it as being so valuable. It really is like an underestimated piece of the equation, because we all work alone and we think that it's fine. We can just get by and we can do our thing here in our homes for months and years on end. But after a while, we realize we can't, and we need each other in order to succeed.
And the fastest way to learn and move forward is by talking to people that have done this before. And it's one thing to talk to someone like you about productivity, or someone like Matt Mullen about email marketing. And it's another, and still in a lot of cases, equally important and helpful to talk to someone that's at your level or slightly above your level and sharing what they've learned. What mistakes have they made? What have they found that works for you? And it's not some expert in this. It's just another blogger like you.
Yeah.
It says, this has worked for me. You might want to try it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the experts talking to everyone, because we all experience different things and we're all in different parts of our journey. And someone that has been blogging for a year might have insights about something that I'm doing wrong. I've been blogging for 10 years and I'm like, great, tell me, because I need to learn too. So we can all learn from each other. It's not just about experts talking down to people who are just starting. It's like all of us connecting and just being open to that too, and not assuming that when you go into a community, it's like, I need to learn from the experts. Everyone has something to share within a community.
I think it's also great hearing from other people going through this journey that almost by definition, we're trying to provide completed content for people on our blogs. We're not sharing our blogging journey. We're not talking about a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, because the majority of our fans don't care about that. They want a recipe for chicken parm. And so I think a lot of people see that and they think like, well, I'm not at that level. I don't have that. They have it so well together. And then you talk to them in these communities like Eat Blog Talk, and they're like, no, I don't know what I'm doing half the time. I'm overwhelmed. Like, yeah, that shot was great, but the cat walked through it 2 seconds after, so I didn't get the picture I wanted. So I had to use that one. And you learn that you're not alone in this journey, that everyone else has their own struggles. They have their own times that they're falling behind, and none of us, have it together all the time.
No,
that can be reaffirming.
It is. It's reassuring. It's a good way to know that we're all kind of on the same page, even though we might be at different levels of our blogging game. We all are just in it together, and there are always new things coming out that we need to be aware of. I have people all the time who just started blogging and they're like, do you know about this or this change or this new app? That's how I learned about the jump rope app from someone who's been blogging for like a year or two. And I was like, no, I don't. Thank you for sharing. So it's like we're all in it together. It's not like the experts, the people who have it all figured out. It's not like that. We are all on the same team.
The thing that I always think is funny too is that they're not funny, not funny, haha, sad funny, is that people go to conferences and they'll come out and they'll be like, well, I don't know how I have time to do all of what I've learned. And it's like, no one does all of what you just learned. Like, yeah, the YouTube person, does a ton of stuff. They do 40 hours a week on YouTube, and the Instagram person does 40 hours a week on Instagram, and the Facebook Live person does 40 hours a week on Facebook Live. But they're not also doing 40 hours a week on YouTube and Instagram. They probably might not even have accounts on those networks. They are focused on their one thing, and that's why they are the expert in that. So don't feel like you have to do everything that all the experts are doing across all of the outlet that you can, because none of them are doing that.
That's the hard part about food blogging, is that we all feel like we have to do it all and we have to have everything perfect. Our Facebook page has to be raking in the followers. We have to be on Instagram all the time. I mean, there's so many things that we, quote, have to be doing, but really we don't. I mean, there are so many successful food bloggers who don't even pay attention to their Facebook accounts. You just have to, again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with thinking about your future self. What do you want you and your business to be focused on in a year? And that will help you. Do you want to be a Facebook expert? Do you want to be an Instagram expert? And that kind of helps you know what to focus on. But conferences are really stressful for that reason. When I was a younger blogger, I remember coming home too and being just so overwhelmed. Like, where do I even start with all this information? Oh, it's hard to sort through that. I get that pain. I get the struggle.
And so if someone out there says, okay, I want to diversify, I want to find out more ideas for where I am going to, is there a book you know of, something that talks about diversification of your revenue streams maybe?
Yeah. So last summer, I realized again that I had actually kind of unknowingly been diversifying, and realized it was because of all of the amazing, smart guests that were on Eat Blog Talk podcast. So Bethany and I, which is co-owner of Eat Blog Talk, we decided to take all of the interviews that I'd conducted on the theme of monetization. So that covers so many different categories, and transcribe them and put them together in a book and kind of highlight the good points from the transcripts and point out, if you want to start self-publishing a book, you should probably talk to Jason, and things like that. So we put it together in this ebook. It's almost 700 pages, but we do have intros for each section, so you wouldn't need to read the transcript if you didn't want to. But yeah, it just goes through every form of monetization that you could ever think about. Things like affiliate marketing, cookbooks traditionally, digital cookbooks, platforms like Prepare. I mean, like the whole gamut. And there's so much opportunity for food bloggers to make money. And don't make the same mistake I did and assume that it's all about advertising. I know this is a message you share a lot too, Jason, but ads are great and they're a great kind of baseline revenue to have, but it's not everything. There's so much more. So our book is called Conversations on Monetization. And I don't know if you want to share your link. I know you're an affiliate for that book, Jason, so you could probably do that. But yeah, it's a great resource. And it just, like, if you're having problems knowing where to start, it will help you sort through that. And also, if you already are monetizing through multiple streams, it will also help you to kind of think about more. So it's not like a beginner only. It's really for
I learned a lot from it.
Any food blogger who's looking to branch out.
I really enjoyed the book going through it, and there's a lot of great stuff that I was like, there's several different interviews that I read through, and I was like, yeah, these are things that I need to kind of brush up on. And I've been, blogging for 10 years, and I speak about diversifying your income, and I still learned a bunch. Yeah,
good. I'm so glad to hear that. It's really for everyone.
Well, Megan, if people want more information from you, they can check out the Eat Blog Talk community, the Eat Blog Talk podcast, which is amazing as well, and Pip and Ebby for great holiday cookie recipes, among a lot of other things. But we are enjoying the holiday cookies today.
Good. I love it.
Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate you sharing your expertise. And, I think it was a very important message, especially this time of year. And with everything going on these days, is just you have to take care of yourself, or you're not going to be able to take care of your business.
So true. Thank you for having me. This was super fun, Jason.
Well, I really appreciate it. And this has been Makin Bacon, all about helping you serve your fans, grow your income, and get the most out of your blog. Remember, you can join us live every Thursday when we record these episodes. You can ask the guest questions, talk to the other bloggers in the comments, and even see our smiling faces. So join us Thursdays at makethatbacon.com/live. Until next time, I'm Jason Logston. See you next Thursday.